Hello everyone, welcome once again to Books Wale Bhaiya. I'm Abhishek. In my last video published last week, I talked about the books I loved reading the most in the year 2021, and this video is a continuation of that. So it's like part 2 of the video when I talked about the books I loved reading the most in 2021. Once again, please note that I am sticking to the non-fiction books. Though I do read fiction, I read more non-fiction, and this video is all about the non-fiction books which I loved reading the most in 2021. So let's start. The first book which I will talk about is Lady Doctors by Kavitha Rao. Well, it is about women who became doctors, and you may say that what's so special? I mean, there are many women who are doctors now, so what's special about Lady Doctors? Well, it is special because it tells you about the first Indian women who became doctors. This book talks about 6 ladies who became doctors, and it talks about an era of covering the period between 1860 to somewhere around 1930, wherein it was not common for women to even get educated, and they were relegated to the household chores. They used to get married at very early age, and they just had to take care of the families. Well, there are 6 brave women who defeated all odds, and in the period in the 19th century, they rose to become doctors. It takes into account the stories of 6 women. When one of them fought child marriage and tried to become a doctor, one of them had raised several children. I think it was about 8 kids, but that did not deter her from becoming a doctor. And mind you, we are talking of an era wherein not only were women relegated to the back burner in terms of just taking care of the husband and kids. We're talking of an era where they faced several other challenges, and not just the societal norms. They faced in terms of the caste system, the prevailing patriarchy, as well as the British rule. So there were plenty of problems in that time, especially more even for the women. However, these are some real life inspiring stories. They broke all odds, and not only just got educated, but went on to become doctors and medical professionals. If you're looking for some real inspiration in life, I would strongly recommend you reading this book, Lady Doctors by Kavitha Rao. The next book, I would say rather 2 books, it's about freedom fighter Veer Savarkar, authored by Vikram Sampath. Before I talk about the books, a bit about Veer Savarkar, or Vinayak Damodar Savarkar as was his original name. When you talk about Veer Savarkar, you're all this kind of views being very extreme. It's like on the opposite ends of the political spectrum. Some will call him a communal bigot, some will call him someone who propounded theory of Hindutva and who was a communal to the core. People say these things about Savarkar, whereas there are other people on the other end of the political spectrum who say that he was a revolutionary, a freedom fighter, and who had played a very significant role in India's freedom. So when we see these 2 views, I think there is something you should know about the personality to think about him in those terms. You can have some meaningful conclusions about him. And this is where Vikram Sampath's books fit in. It tells you practically everything there is to know about Veer Savarkar. And I think if someone is going to form an opinion about Veer Savarkar, I think he should go through these monumental works of Vikram Sampath. These are 2 books, part 1 and part 2, and I am considering them as one book. So therein what you get to know about Veer Savarkar, as I said, what you get to know about practically everything. However, you realize that Savarkar was not only about the theory of Hindutva. You get to know many facets of Savarkar. Like, for example, way back in 1904, he formed a society called Abhinav Bharat, which was a secret society formed to fight against the British rule. He even sent people to other countries. He even tried to touch base with other revolutionaries across the world to fight for India's independence. And he was arrested somewhere around 1910 in France by the British, which was actually an illegal way of capturing anyone. So his contribution was restricted and not just about propagating a theory. He revolutionized the young minds to fight for their country's freedom. You get to know through these books that he was a staunch supporter of Hindu unity, and by which we mean he was completely against the caste system, and even talked of annihilating the caste system. He organized several luncheon or dinner meetings wherein people of different caste dined together. He was also a poet, a writer, as well as a playwright, and he not only read a lot, he also wrote plenty of books. Many other facets which you get to know about Savarkar is that when he was released from the jail, he was still in a way a prison of the British government. Like for more than a decade, if I remember it correctly, he was kept under observance by the British because they thought that this man could be potentially very weaken the British rule, and he is someone who has to be kept under watch. Interestingly, you get to know that Veer Savarkar and Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar had views somewhat similar when it came to Mahatma Gandhi. They both were actually disenchanted by Mahatma Gandhi, and while though these two personalities never got to meet each other, you will see through the book that yes, they had views which were, you can say, very similar. They both were strongly against the caste system. They both were against the practices of Mahatma Gandhi. So there are many facets of Savarkar which you get to know. For example, even before Mahatma Gandhi gave a call to boycott British goods, it was Veer Savarkar who started doing this. So as I said, it tells you everything you can say you practically need to know about Savarkar. They do talk about his attitude towards minorities, his theory of Hindutva and what did he mean by that. But all in all, I would say it is a must-read book or must-read books on to know about Savarkar. They are very important books to read on India's political history, on India's freedom struggle, and in a sense it covers several aspects of Indian society as well as a bit about world history. So I think it's a must read for all history buffs, and what I said in the beginning I will repeat. If you want to form an opinion on Savarkar, well, do form. You are entitled to form your own view on Savarkar, but before that, please read these books. For all history buffs, for everyone who wants to know about India's past, India's freedom struggle, I would say these are must reads. The other book I'm talking about it's a bit of self-improvement, or it's a book on wealth, on happiness. It's called The Almanack of Naval Ravikant. So Naval Ravikant is an Indian-American entrepreneur and investor. He has invested in early stage in many companies, including Twitter and Foursquare and many other companies. So this is a book of actually a compilation of his views, his tweets, and wherever he has talked and published. Now, before you say that, okay, this is another some gyan or knowledge on self-improvement and all, well, I would say that yes, it is that, but at the same time, these are different books. I would say some of the views and all, I would say I found to be very interesting, very practical, and this is the reason why I would say this is one of my favorite books I read in the year 2021. So, for example, he talks about wealth and happiness, and when he says that when it comes to achieving wealth, the most important thing you need to have is that you need to have a kind of skill which differentiates you from others, and you build upon that skill and you arrive at a level wherein you get some kind of proprietary knowledge, and you may be some field, let's say medicine or law, or for that matter anything, but you have a certain skill set which cannot be matched by others. So when you reach that level, is that that can help you in generating wealth. So, and for that he recommends that you have to be like a perpetual learning machine. You have to keep on learning throughout your whole life. So, and that is one way he strongly recommends of building wealth. He also talks about the power of compounding, and he says nothing meaningful can be achieved unless until it gets compounded, whether it's knowledge, it's money, or any other thing. So these are very practical suggestions which I found very useful. And another interesting things he talks about, and I would say is very blunt when he says is that happiness, when you talk about happiness is being satisfied with what you have. And when it comes to success, that success, well, it comes from some sort of dissatisfaction here and there, because you have to keep reinventing the wheel, you have to keep on making efforts. So while many times someone would say that, okay, there is wealth, there is happiness, I think he's very candid in when he says that success comes from some sort of dissatisfaction, and happiness is you have to be satisfied somewhere in your life. So loaded with practical, real life, small sentences, I would say. I thoroughly enjoyed reading this book. It's a wonderful compilation, and what I would recommend is that to get the maximum out of this book, please keep on reading this book several times. Very practical, meaningful suggestions, and therefore I strongly recommend this book. The next book I am suggesting is The Great Hindu Civilization by Pavan Verma. Pavanji is a retired diplomat. He is a well-known author. He has authored several books related to India, to Hinduism, to Indian society, and this is the book which was published in this year itself, The Great Hindu Civilization. So, well, what does Pavanji has to say about the Great Hindu Civilization? Well, first of all, he starts the book by raising a question that was there ever a Hindu civilization? While a left-leaning intellectual historian may say that there never existed a Hindu civilization, Pavanji vehemently argues that there was a Hindu civilization, and not only did a Hindu civilization exist, he says this is one of those rare civilizations which are still there. So he makes a strong case for Hindu civilization in the past as well as something which is present today, and he expresses a disagreement with the left-leaning intellectuals who always have never accepted the fact that there was a Hindu civilization. Here also he brings home the point that even after independence, that Pandit Nehru, despite all his good intentions, was someone who always wanted to look at the future and not at the past, and past was for Pandit Nehru was of no use. However, somewhere in between, in rejecting that past, he says we somewhat rejected everything that was there in the past. And while he says one cannot over exaggerate the achievements of the Hindu civilization of the past, but absolutely denying it's something which is wrong. He then talks about how since ancient times, or you can say somewhere around since the times of Adi Shankaracharya, how did Hinduism, as not just as a religion but as a thought, it grew over time. And there came many thought leaders who interpreted Hinduism, who interpreted its rituals, its meanings, everything. And there were shades of disagreement between these thought leaders. However, he says that this disagreement over time, over a millennia, actually shows how Hinduism is different from other religions, because it does not follow one particular god or one particular book, and any one of us can actually interpret it, Hinduism or its practices, in our own way. The other important chapters are one on on Islamic civilization and then on British rule. So in Islamic civilization, what he talks about it, yes, there were instances wherein Islamic rulers from other countries came. And once again, he said that there were certain wrong things done in the past. And while that is not at all an excuse to criticize Islamic rule or any Muslim today, but there was something which happened in the past, and let's not deny it completely. At the same time, he also talks of the British rule, that how British rule actually helped erode the values of Hindu civilization, because Britishers wanted to dominate the Indian people, and hence they founded an education system in which Indians in some way or the other were made to feel inferior about their own culture and sing all praises for the British civilization. So great disservice to the Hindu civilization was done under British rule. There's absolutely no doubt in that. There's another chapter which talks about the present situation. He expresses his displeasure over some of the policies of the present government, especially the CA NRC rule, and he is very open and vocal in his criticism for such policies, wherein he says the government is differentiating between people on the basis of their religion. All in all, I would say a must-read book to understand what Hindu civilization is, what it was, and what does the future looks like. The next book is A New Idea of India, Individual Rights in a Civilizational State by Madhusudan and Mantri. They both are investors and authors. And now this is the book, before we start, one thing about this book is that everywhere you will see people saying this is a book by right-wing intellectuals. So while I somewhat agree that yes, they are right-wing intellectuals, and well, what better than Mr. Shashi Tharoor himself saying that this book proves that there is no lack of right-wing intellectuals in India. So is this a book to be read about India only for the right-wing intellectuals? Well, I disagree. I think they talk about some of the problems of the country and the solution which they think are suitable for the country. So the best way to read and understand this book is if you do not look at it from a left-wing or a right-wing perspective. After all, let's accept that there are certain problems within the country, within the society, and there are certain solutions. So they talk about India's issues and all from a civilizational perspective. They talk about problems related to economy, to secularism. They express their views on secularism and tell what they find wrong with the way secularism is being practiced in India. For example, the minority-run institutions, which the authors say at times may give an incentive for people to convert. They run on the government money, and they at times they do not follow policies such as the reservation for the backward caste, under reservation and the right to education for poor people. So in a way, they disagree with the way secularism is being practiced in institutions. Then they talk about things such as lack of government control of institution or temples and religious places run by Muslims and Christians. However, they say that no such restriction actually applies to Hindu temples. So which they say is actually not exactly secularism, because if after all secularism means a separation between state and church, then why should the government be handling Hindu temples? They also talk about economy, and yes, they are very vocal in their criticism of the Nehruvian socialism, which India followed for a lot of decades, even after independence. And they are very vocal in saying that did no good to the country, it did more harm than good. And they make a strong case for privatization and several other, you can say, what you call the right-wing economic policies. They also have a chapter on judiciary, and while I am no judicial expert, but they have expressed their dissatisfaction there about what is actually wrong in Indian judiciary and why it is in urgent need of reforms, why there have been instances of judicial overreach, and wherein probably the judiciary itself is unaware of the challenges and they did not look at the way they should have looked at it. So once again, I'm not a judicial expert, and I'm just saying what they have talked about in this book. So yes, there are certain of these issues which they have discussed and what is their idea of India. Once again, coming to the left wing versus the right wing debate, I would say yes, they are inclined towards the right wing, but honestly, I don't say anything wrong as long as they are expressing their views in a civilized manner, and they are full of praise for the current Narendra Modi government, and they highlight some of the reforms being undertaken by them who they feel are very, very beneficial for the country in the long term, like the bankruptcy code or, for example, GST and other such measures. If you want to get a good perspective on India, their problems, past, present, and future, one book I strongly recommend, irrespective of whatever side of the political spectrum you are in. The next book is The Key Man by Simon Clark and Will Louch, both Wall Street journalists. But The Key Man, so this is the story of a man called Arif Naqvi who wanted to change the world. He wanted to change the world through philanthropy by letting people make money and do something good for the society, for the world as a whole. Well, sounds interesting, isn't it? Well, the next book is The Key Man by Simon Clark and Will Louch, both Wall Street journalists. So this book is about the key man called Arif Naqvi, who was in touch with the global elite, and he gave them options to invest their money, which would not only help them earn good returns, but it also help the society and in solving the world problems. For example, some like Bill Gates arranged about $1 billion fund to help generate good healthcare facilities in poorer countries. So this is what this key man was about. It sounds interesting, isn't it? Wherein people are investing money to do something good for the world at large. Well, it is interesting not because Arif was a philanthropist, but because this man was arrested in April 2019 on account of fraud. And if all the charges are proven, he theoretically, yes, he would get 291 years in jail because of financial frauds committed. So here is Arif Naqvi, the key man who actually duped the global elite by talking of things like helping the poor, building a better world and whatnot, and actually led to a lot of scandals. Interesting thing to know about here is that the key man approached Bill Gates and several other people such as John Kerry. He even got blessings from the Pope, and he was someone who was able to rub shoulders with the rich and mighty and was able to create meaningful, you can say, talks and presentations wherein everyone fell for this man and thought that yes, he is the key man who can help solve the world's greatest problems. But interestingly, this book is not only about Arif Naqvi, who of course is the kingpin of all of this. The book has been written in such a manner is that it raises questions even on several global institutions or the way it is being run, or you can say the entire ecosystem. They question that how come several people like faculties from Harvard and Yale and prestigious universities who could not understand what's actually going behind all of this facade. He questions a big four global audit firm why they could not have any explanation for entries running into hundreds of millions of dollars. So they have an attack on the entire ecosystem, and they say that it's a global financial system which actually needs to be, you can say, reformed in such a manner so that such things are captured at the very beginning rather than waiting for more the scandals to emerge. It reads like a thriller. Of course, it's a work of non-fiction. It's all true events which have occurred. But if you're looking for something which tells you about a very important global phenomena, as well gives you a feel of reading a thriller, I think this is the book for you. The last book we are covering is Atomic Habits by James Clear. And before we say, okay, no more self-help books, please. In fact, to be honest, I am someone who is not very fond of reading self-help books. But this book is, I would say, a bit different. It talks about atomic habits, and it talks about success or achievements in life through the purview of habits. So the author James Clear argues that it's your habits which actually makes you what you are, and his focus is on that. However, he also mentions that habits are basically nothing but a starting point. So you cannot have your habit as your goal. And he talks of breaking down those habits in simple, easy to do steps. For example, if you want to be a runner, you cannot think of, okay, I'll run 5 miles every day from today. It's just not possible. So he talks about making very small goals and working accordingly. Say if you want to run 5 miles or 5 kilometers, you have to start with walking or running. You have to start with walking basically. You have to start walking or running for, let's say, just 10 more minutes. 10 minutes or 15 minutes every day. This is his approach, and he actually makes every such thing very easy in and simple to understand manner. Like he talks about when you have goals, they should be achievable, there should be some element of motivation, it should be like absolutely easy to follow in the beginning. So that's what he says. And now while some may say, okay, this is all very simple things, we already know this, but actually this book helps you understand the importance of keeping things simple. You cannot achieve success by making things very complex for you, and I think this is the beauty of the book. One very interesting point which I liked in this book is when the author says you do not rise to the level of your goals, you make them fall to the level of your system. So you do not achieve, basically it's like saying you have to start from where you are. If you want to achieve something big, do not get that by straight away moving to that. You have to start from where you are, and these particular tidbits of information of his views which I like the most. One good thing about this book is also that at the end of every chapter there is a summary, so which you can actually follow and keep it handy wherever you want, whenever you want to refer to this book. However, I would say don't just read the summary, read the entire book. But if you're looking for a very practical guide to achieve your dreams, achieve your goals, this is one book I would strongly recommend. And please keep in mind, the best part of this book lies in its simplicity. Instead of thinking this is way too simple, he actually makes you understand the importance of simple things, that how big tasks are achieved by following a very simple, easy to do approach. And that is the reason why I love this book. Thank you for watching my video. I hope you like the books. If you have not read any of them, I am sure you will enjoy reading them. Wish you all a very happy new year 2022. Please give a thumbs up if you liked my review and subscribe to my channel for more updates. You can reach me at readwithat@gmail.com. Thank you.